Are you a fan of vodka? A lot of bartenders do give it a bit of a bad rap because it's seen as a very neutral spirit and therefore boring. And it's fair that a lot of vodkas do taste pretty similar. To be fair, it doesn't really help that for a long time the legal definition of vodka in the States was that it was neutral spirits so distilled or so treated after distillation with charcoal or other materials as to be without distinctive character, aroma, taste or colour, which sounds like a pretty big diss from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms if you ask me. Also, as an aside, can any of those people out in the States let me know why one kind of government thing governs all of those three quite different things? Anyway, they have amended it now, so it just says neutral spirits and they can have a little bit of sugar or a little bit of citric acid added. That said, I was actually at a vodka training once and they got us to do a blind tasting, which I thought was a pretty bold move from the brand because it was obviously, you know, pitting itself against the competitors with all of the marketing stripped away. And I was actually pretty surprised at how noticeable the differences were between them. I have spoken before in another video about the factors that influence what a spirit is going to taste like, and what it's made from is definitely a big one. And in vodka, you do really taste that because most are distilled on the same kind of still, so a continuous or column still, and that does strip out more flavour than a pot still generally. And then obviously none of them are aged, so you're not getting any kind of influence from a barrel or anything like that. And then unlike a lot of spirits which have to be made from a certain base, so you know, rum and sugar or whiskies and you know, various barley or corn or whatever, vodka can be made from basically anything that can be distilled. Historically, grains and potato are the most common ones, but I've even seen ones made from honey and sheep's whey and quinoa. So let's have a little taste through some vodkas made from different bases and see if we can see what the differences are. So I'm going to start with, I guess, a bit of a control one. So Grey Goose is made from wheat and that's probably the most common worldwide. I would honestly have to check that fact, but it feels like it is. And it does tend to produce like kind of quite soft and quite neutral vodkas. So it smells quite fresh and citrusy. But yeah, not too much else really. Yeah, definitely, you know, you can kind of smell a bit of alcohol on there as well because it's not really got, again, kind of any wood or anything like that that sort of tends to mask that a little bit. Yep, so soft, like tiny hint of vanilla, tiny hint of citrus, but it kind of probably does live up to that real sort of neutral, you know, is the word of the day here. And I think that's honestly why it's so popular. Grey Goose is probably probably the thing that gets ordered the most sort of brand called across the bar. And they've obviously done a really good job of marketing and nobody's really not gonna like that if you're a vodka drinker. There's nothing to kind of upset anyone in there. So obviously gonna work in basically all of your classic vodka drinks. Now Belvedere is a little Polish vodka and this is actually made from rye. So if you think about the difference between sort of a wheat whiskey, which is generally what's used in blended whiskies to kind of bulk out the single malts, and again quite kind of a neutral like flavour profile there. Rye whiskey obviously is usually pretty like big and bold and spicy, so it'll be kind of interesting to see if that manages to filter through this at all. So I feel like that does jump out the glass a little bit more, but doesn't smell massively dissimilar to Grey Goose. I'm definitely not really getting any further notes than, again, a little bit of citrus and a little bit of like actual kind of ethanol alcohol smell. It genuinely is a bit spicier, like there's just a bit more. It kind of made my tongue tingle a little bit, which didn't really happen with the Grey Goose. It felt kind of, pretty like soft and smooth across the whole palate. It's always hard to tell, obviously, if there's a bit of a placebo effect because I do know what I'm tasting, but I would say that that's like a little bit bolder, and you know, maybe if you were having a martini or something that you kind of want the vodka to take a bit more center stage, that could be a good option while still not being too in your face. Like again, it's not going to offend anyone who's kind of used to drinking vodka. Now these ones are all kind of Australian ones because that's what I had to hand, but there are examples of things, you know, vodkas made from all of what these ones are made from, made all around the world. So I'm going to start with the little Adelaide Hills one. Adelaide Hills is a really big wine producing region. So they actually make it from basically the waste from the wine industry, so grapes essentially, but once they've been pressed and things like that. So it smells a little bit sweeter, and obviously these guys were quite citrusy, but this one is like a little bit more fruity. I definitely wouldn't be able to, you know, put my finger on grape, but it does smell like a little bit kind of sweeter and juicier. Yeah, and the same on the palate, probably about the same texture and body as the Belvedere, so a little bit rounder than the Grey Goose, and again I find it slightly sweeter, and yeah, quite nice and kind of approachable. I reckon that would work well in your sort of Cosmos or like citrusy and kind of berry, you know, a French martini or something like that. That's going to play quite nicely in there, just bring a little bit more kind of heft to it. Now Archie Rose are up in Sydney. This one's just fun because actually what they've done is a native botanical vodka, so it's almost somewhere between a vodka and a gin really, but it just doesn't have juniper in it, so they have infused it with some different flavours. We've got lemon scented gum, native sunrise lime and Australian peach, which sounds quite delicious. Very peachy, and yeah, really nice and kind of lifted, lots of fun citrus notes on there. And obviously, yeah, it's still a lot more neutral than a liqueur or something more kind of actually flavoured. Like it's still got that really kind of clean palate. So if you do want something that's a little bit fruity but not too full on, that's a little kind of flavoured vodka can definitely be a good option in there. I reckon that'd be really nice just with soda on a summer's day as well. Again, if you just don't want something as full on as gin, or you're not really into that woody spice or juniper flavour, definitely a good option. Didn't have quite enough glasses there, but I reckon this guy is going to definitely overpower any Grey Goose left in there. So this one is a little potato vodka. So used to be super common, a little bit less common now. This one's made down in Tassie, but again, there's plenty made sort of worldwide. That definitely smells the most different of all of them, even, you know, the Archie Rose that actually has other things kind of infused in there. This is like real kind of like potato-y, like very kind of floury and quite savoury smelling. And again, kind of jumps out the glass a lot more than any of the rest of them, I would say. It's pretty crazy how different the mouthfeel is, like it's real kind of coats your mouth. Obviously there's not any sugar or anything in there, it's in a savoury way, but the actual spirit weight is just quite different. I could be wrong, but I don't think Hellfire is a very big distillery, so I'd be surprised if they have a full column still. It might be what's called a hybrid still, or even actually a pot still, which would kind of explain why that spirit has a little bit more weight to it, but I'll do a little bit of research into that and let you know in the description below. But this is definitely my favourite, I have to say. I think in like a dirty martini or something like that, it's just really gonna stand up. I don't think you could substitute it into, you know, a cosmopolitan or a French martini. That'd be pretty weird, like it's too kind of funky. But again, in something where it's gonna be center stage and really kind of shine through, that's definitely, I would say, the most interesting of all of them. So there we have a little taste through of some vodkas, and again, you know, I really do think it's something that, especially if you're someone who's quite dismissive of vodka, is kind of worth doing, because they are varied. It's definitely a little bit more subtle nuances than, you know, like an Isla whiskey and a Speyside whiskey or something, like a big peated thing and something that's really light and floral. But if you're looking, there's definitely a little bit of interest going on in there, and therefore, you know, kind of some will work better in certain drinks than others. Vodka. So now you know.